Welcome back. Windhoek's water management system is divided into formal and informal areas, but access to safe drinking water in Namibia is especially skewed in favor of formal urban areas. In the formal areas, controlling demand remains a key concern, while in the informal areas, improved accessibility to water is crucial. For better understanding on this, I'm now joined on the line by Dr. Earl Lewis, who is in water management in Informal Settlements at the University of Namibia. Dr. Lewis, good evening and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Nina, and thank you for having me on your broadcast.
Dr. Lewis, talk to us about what necessitated, the researchers at UNAM to research on quality water, in informal sectors.
Well, as we all know, water is a fundamental need for human survival, used for basic necessities such as drinking, cooking, cleaning, and attending to personal hygiene. And it is projected that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. And most of this in-migration and urbanization will lead to the rapid expansion of informal settlements. The challenge faced by the residents of informal settlements not only include lack of adequate water, but other basic necessities such as electricity, proper infrastructure, sanitation, waste removal, and so on. Mm-hmm. And what motivated us to study this was that if something is not done, if we do not have proper planning and do proper research, that the situation will only become dire and dire in the future.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the way to mitigate these challenges that you mentioned, which of course hamper ensuring quality water in the informal sectors?
There are a number of things that can be done. They range from looking at policies, because many countries in Africa are still working with the pre-informal settlement policies. So proper institutions should be put in place to properly handle this challenge. That would include experts in the specific area, as well as a dedicated budget. When looking at technology and talking about in terms of water quality, water availability, we could use dry sanitation or chemicals where we could dispose of the fecal matter on site.
Mm-hmm. I want to know, how does water quality in the informal sector differ from water quality in the formal sector, Doctor?
Well, I would say that the main difference between the formal sector and the informal sector, of course, that the formal sector is planned. The residential areas have fully serviced plots with water and sewage connections. And most of the times in the informal settlements, it's just an emergency provision that is supplied to the informal settlements with very limited sewage facilities, or sometimes none at all. Mm-hmm. This, or the inadequacy of these services, then encourages the informal settlers or the residents of the informal settlements to have to discard of fecal matter into the surrounding areas, such as bushes or water bodies nearby, such as wells or rivers. So this drastically potentially could pollute the water.
And of course, we know that the health risks associated with consuming, low quality water can be grave. Just talk us through that and, of course, help us understand how far-reaching the consequences of this can be.
Well, yes, due to the lack of sewage, proper sanitation facilities such as wash basins, latrines, running water close by, the residents of informal settlements are forced to practice unsanitary practices such as bathing, washing their clothes, cleaning their utensils, and even relieving themselves in the water bodies. And this could lead to fecal matter from animals and humans being permanently in the water. This could lead to thermotolerant coliforms in the water, and sometimes the informal settlers use this water also as drinking, as sometimes they have no other choice. And owing to the fecal contamination, there's a high possibility of the presence of disease pathogens in the water not suitable for human consumption.
Are you there, Doctor?
Sorry, can you just give me 1 minute? I've got a small emergency.
Well, in that instance, let's take a brief break while Dr. Lewis attends to that. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the Daily Roundup with Nina. We were in conversation with Dr. Earl Lewis, who's in water management in informal settlements from the University of Namibia. Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. Just continuing our conversation, I want to talk about, of course, the role that communities and local organizations need to play in addressing water quality issues in the informal sector.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Yes. Definitely local communities and private organizations do play a pivotal role in the water conditions of informal settlements. So first of all, the local communities are the people actually on the ground. These are the residents living in those conditions. So they have a say as to how and what they think, how they would like to live, the conditions that they would like to live in, and living in those areas they are the ones that could actually give the ideas or best practices for improving the conditions of the informal settlements. Private organizations also play a pivotal role because in many countries, governments are failing to catch up with the rapid growth of the informal settlements. So there are things that they could do, such as supply water or develop low-cost systems that could be used and specifically made for the informal settlements. So in the entirety, it's just to work together within government to improve the situation.
And then lastly, Dr. Lewis, are there any innovative technologies or approaches being used to address these water quality challenges?
I would say there are a number of technologies. As I mentioned before, it's using dry toilets because there's a lack of sewage systems. Also using chemicals that could help decompose fecal matter and other types of waste on site. And things simple as the tippy tap. It's resourceful. You can make it from recycled material. It's easy to use and efficient. But I think overall, these are just methods that are looking at the symptoms, and the source of the problem is that the immigration, that people are coming to the cities or the capital cities for the dream of a better life. And I think what many governments should start to think about is actually decentralizing, creating employment, improving infrastructure such as hospitals and schools and roads, where the people are not forced basically to come to the cities to create a better life, but actually stay where they're coming from and improve the conditions there.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Earl Lewis, thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nina. It was a pleasure.
When we come back, we have some more conversations. Stay watching the Daily Roundup.